Here we go. Hello, everybody. This is Brett Premack, another edition of Jazz Video Guy Live. I want to welcome you. It's Friday, October 30th. There's a big election coming up in the United States very soon. People are on edge about that. But today, no politics, just jazz. My guest today is tenor saxophonist, an educator, a man who has played with some of the greats in the history of jazz and is now making some history on his own. His name is Javon Jackson, and Javon will be joining us in about 10 minutes. For those of us who might not know Javon or Javon's playing, I'm going to start off with some music that he played at a jazz festival in Thailand earlier this year, before the pandemic. And then Javon will come back. I will come back. Javon will join me. And Javon has a new album. We'll be talking about that. Excuse me. And his playing with Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, Freddie Hubbard, Elvin Jones, Cedar Walton, and his own music. And of course, now as the main man at the Jackie McLean Institute of Jazz at Hart College. So here we go with Javon Jackson. So you're a young man. You're seeing Sonny Stitt. I mean, wow! Did that blow your mind? I mean, what was that like?
Well, it scared me to death. I mean, I had a couple of his records, and my father took me backstage. I got to meet him. He signed a record I had called Constellation. I'll never forget that. Another record I had called So Doggone Good, which he was on the cover with his wife with that. And he signed those two records for me. And I spent the whole first set with him, you know, at the venue. And then he told my father, he said, bring him by the hotel tomorrow and I'll give him a lesson. So when I went out and told my dad, I said, wow, we didn't find out what hotel he's at so I can get the lesson tomorrow. He said, oh, he don't want to be bothered with you. And my father didn't really understand how that is. And the musician says those kind of things, he really meant that. But I didn't get the lesson, so I kind of rib my dad about that to this day. But that, just seeing Sonny Stitt was awesome, man, because he knew the instrument so well, and he played Constellation. I remember that night, since I had brought that record, and just a flawless saxophonist. It was incredible.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. Well, you speak about getting a lesson from Sonny Stitt.
Yeah, well, I got a lesson for that night.
You did get, yeah, I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
But you are involved in education. But before the advent of these jazz education programs, the way this music was passed on was if you got your horn or whatever you played together, you got a chance to be in a group like Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, which was really like a university. Could you talk about the experience of working with a master like Art Blakey and how that opened up the music for you?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I got a chance to meet Branford Marcellus when I was a senior in high school. And Branford gave me the encouragement to go to Berkeley. I told him I wanted to play with Art Blakey. I knew at that time because I had been aware of he and Winton with the Messengers. And he said, go to Berkeley after we got a chance to practice together and spend some time with Billy Pierce. I went to Berkeley just to do that. And also during that time, I met Donald Brown, who was teaching there. And Donald became a really important mentor from that moment on. And he was in the Messengers at that time. So he was really critical for me to get opportunity to audition. And as you said, playing with Art Blakey was like going from the third grade to Harvard. You know what I mean? Because every night the music is on such a high level, incredible young people in the band. When I joined the band, it was Donald Brown was the pianist, Kenny Garrett was the alto saxophonist, and Wallace Roney, God rest his soul, was the trumpeter. So it was an incredible opportunity for me to play with Art and really delve into music that he created and he was an icon for. And then I met so many other jazz musicians during that time. And most of the musicians I met during that time, I would eventually work with them. But Art Blakey was the conduit for me to meet those guys. So it was just tremendous, his encouragement. And he took the music so serious. He put it on such a high level every night. He never cheated the bandstand, as he would say. So it was again, I wouldn't be here without him, so I owe him everything. And it was such great for him.
Well, a lot of musicians feel the same way. I mean, if you look at the list of people who played in the Messengers, I mean, many have gone on to be quote-unquote jazz stars on their own. But I wanted to ask you something, because I got to lower this music a little bit here. Playing with Art Blakey, having Art Blakey as your drummer, and then you also played with Elvin Jones, who is a difference of night and day. Both are very unique stylists. Could you say something about what it was like to improvise with Art Blakey as your drummer and what it was like to improvise with Elvin Jones accompanying you?
Well, in a way, they're still cut from the same kind of cloth because they're extremely supportive drummers and definitely completely immersed in the idea of supporting the ensemble and playing the arrangement. So I asked Elvin one time who his favorite drummer was, and he told me it was Art Blakey. So he came from that, but then obviously Elvin had another kind of way of doing things, but he was still very much a traditional drummer in terms of things that other drummers did, what Art Blakey did. But again, if you look at the evolution of the drums, I was talking to Kenny Washington the other day about this on the phone. And if you look at the evolution of the drums, you can it makes sense the way it evolved until it got to Elvin. And it's almost like, somebody which they did, they just dropped him down and just changed everything. So, but they were very much supportive. I would say Art Blakey, the way we play with the Messengers, you had a certain amount of time, 2 or 3 choruses, and then step aside for the next soloist, unless he would say, let you really feel it, then keep going. But Elvin, it was a group that allowed for more stretching. And I would say this about Elvin, it just felt like the beats were longer. If you played a slower tempo, that the beat from one beat to another just felt much more expansive. We used to play a piece called Mysterioso by Thelonious Monk. Do, dee, do, dee, do, dee, do, dee. And we played really slow, myself and Delphio at that time. And it just felt like it took 10 minutes to play the melody. Just the way Elvin would place those triplets and his time feel. He was, but with both of them, it was like being in church, but on stage.
Yeah, must be an inspiration to be in that holy kind of setting. I mean, you're talking about Elvin Jones and Art Blakey, 2 of the most remarkable creators who've ever been on this earth. And another graduate of the Jazz Messengers U was a gentleman that you also worked with, Mr. Freddie Hubbard. Could you talk to us about, first of all, how you got the gig with Freddie, who was in the band when you played together, and what was it like standing next to Freddie Hubbard of the bandstand every night?
Well, Freddie and I became very close. I looked at Freddie like a father. We were very close. Knew his wife very well. I met him because he did a couple of guest appearances with the Messengers. So he met me at that time. We got a chance to talk. He loved Sonny Rollins. I loved Sonny Rollins. I was into Sonny Rollins heavily at that time. So he took a liking to me, and I stayed in touch with him. So when Art Blakey passed away and I started working a little bit with Elvin, I got an opportunity to do a week with Freddie. My first concert with him, or first appearance with him, was a gig in Philadelphia, and then the next night we did a week at the club called Fat Tuesdays in New York City, and it ended up being a recording that was called Live at Fat Tuesday, and that band was myself, McBride Christian, Benny Green, Tony Reedus, God rest his soul, and Hubbard and myself. And so that was the first time I had got a chance to play with him in his situation. But it was very much intimidating and demanding, because he puts a lot of pressure on himself and on the music and on others that are on stage with him, because he gives it up on such a high level. So I really learned a lot from him about the way he attacks the notes, and his phrasing, and his the weight he puts behind his notes. That really helped me a lot. And getting a chance to play melodies with him, and he had great. I think he didn't say he had perfect pitch, but he had really, really good. He always said relative pitch, but his pitch was really, really good, and his time. What I mean, playing time was so rock solid. He was a man. As an instrumentalist, he was the greatest I've been able to be with on a night-to-night basis.
Yeah.
I mean, horn player, that's what I mean. Instrumentalist, Elvin and Art Blakey are instrumentalists as well, but I mean as a horn player to play with on a night-to-night basis.
Yes, I got a chance to see Freddie live a number of times, and he was a fire breather. I mean, just the trumpet is a very, very difficult instrument. Clark Terry once told me, if I miss a day, I know it. If I miss 2 days, you know it. So it's a cruel taskmaster, the trumpet. And to attain that level of mastery on the instrument and have a unique voice is something that certainly I respect.
Where Clark was special with his discipline, I will say, and Freddie's not here to defend himself, but God rest his soul, his discipline that he had at a certain point in his life, I think, was kind of dissipated by the time I was with him. So he didn't have that same discipline that got him to be what Freddie Hubbard really was. And like you say, the trumpet or the brass instrument, it just gives no mercy. But having said that, he still could get up there with the best of them. But I think if you're not committed on a day-to-day basis to the trumpet or the brass instruments, you'll have to pay your price. But I will say this about Freddie. When I first got to see Freddie live was in Boston, and he reminded me of when I saw Sonny Stitt, because he's a gunslinger. You know what I mean? He just he's one of those kind of guys. I don't know if you guys watch westerns and you get out, gunfight at OK Corral, and you get out there and there's two men and they pull the gun. That's what I mean. That's Hubbard, man. He's the ultimate gunslinger.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at some video that you shot in the studio on your new recording. When we come back, we'll talk about that.
You ready?
Yeah.
All right, stand by.
Is that what you wanted? Yeah.
Okay, we're rolling on take one.
1, 2,
What was that called, Javon?
As for Freddie Hubbard, it's called My Man Hubbard.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we got a question here. Zach Schwartz wants to know about your mouthpiece and reed setup. And someone else asked about your horn. Could you tell the saxophone players out there what horn do you play and why? Your mouthpiece, your reed, any other information that you can share.
Okay, the mouthpiece I play is a Selmer long back H. The reed is a bass clarinet size 3.5. I've been playing bass clarinet reeds on my saxophone well over 25 years or so. I went to Paris with Charlie Haden, and actually Joshua was on that gig, Joshua Redmond and myself. And we went over to the Van Doren factory and we played a bunch of reeds. At that time, I might have been, I don't want to say what other company I was playing, but I was playing some other reeds, and I went over and I tried some of the tenor saxophone reeds. And they just bring them out to you in a nice, like a bucket. And I really wasn't finding that much success with the tenor reeds. You know what? Let me scratch that. Me and Joshua went to the Selmer saxophone factory. Let me be clear on that. But back the reed, I went by myself. So I tried the tenor saxophone reeds. I didn't really find anything that I was comfortable. They don't tell you anything. They brought another bucket out, and I tried those, and they were bass clarinet reeds. I've been playing them ever since. And they say over in Paris that some of the classical tenor saxophone players play bass clarinet, and the classical alto saxophonists play alto clarinet reeds. So I've been playing bass clarinet ever since. The mouthpiece, when I was with Art Blakey, I played a auto link, and the first time Joe Henderson heard me live, he had heard that I was into him, which I really was. Somebody just made a comment that sounds subtly like Joe Henderson, but no, Joe Henderson's my man. So I was playing a Selmer, and Joe Henderson heard me in Japan, and when I came off stage, he said, "Man, get rid of that mouthpiece. You're not filling up the horn." And he crushed me. And I was crushed, you know what I mean? But I thought about it, and he was right. You're looking back on it. But anyway, I got back to New York, and I was hanging out with Kenny Garrett over his place, and he handed me a Selmer mouthpiece. Said, "Go home and try this." And I said, "Man, I don't know. I'm already into Joe Henderson. I don't necessarily want to play his mouthpiece," because Joe played a Selmer too. He said, "Man, just take it home with you." So I was living in Brooklyn. I went back home to Brooklyn, sat on my bedroom dresser, sat there for about a week. So then I got it. I played it for about 5 minutes, took it off, put it back. And the next day I played it for 10 minutes and put it back. And then I played on a little longer and so forth and so on. So then I started playing the F forever. And about maybe 10 years ago, I think Kenny might have given me this one. He told me about this. He handed me an H. I think it was Kenny. And I got an H. And I've been playing that H ever since. The saxophone, I've been playing a Selmer Mark VI forever. This Selmer that you just saw there, about 3 years ago, I was up to see Emilio Lyons, who's in Boston, to get my saxophone repaired. And he was working on my tenor that I've been playing on almost all the records I've made through the Blue Note years and up until like 3 years ago. And I saw a saxophone upside down with no lacquer on it. I said, "Man, what is that?" And he said, "Well, it's a saxophone somebody gave back to me that didn't like it." So he decided to work on it some more, and he took all the lacquer off. And I said, "Could I try that?" So he brought it down, and I played a couple of notes, and I said, "Can I take this home with me?" And I took it home. I've been playing it ever since. And then I gave him back the tenor I've been playing all these records on. So I just love that saxophone. But I've been playing it for the last maybe 4 or 5 years, but not a long time.
Well, it brings up a question, because I remember Sonny Rollins also used to go to Emilio. I remember he used to take these trips to Boston for his horn. When you say that he has to work on the horn, what is there to work on? What do they do? What does a man like Emilio Lyons do when he works on a saxophone?
Well, it's like going to get your car a tune-up. You got this great vehicle, and you want them to check the pistons and check the carburetor, look at the tires, and whatever might need to be fixed. Of course, when we play the saxophone, sometimes we might bend the neck, or sometimes the pads get old and they might need to be changed, or sometimes the saxophone is just out of tune in a way because one pad is not closing or seating, we might say. So he goes up and looks at all that. And then sometimes you give it to him, he gives an overhaul, he tears everything down, and he fixes all of the rods and it gives you a brand new set of pads and all that kind of stuff. But what you do, you just go back to see him like a car. I go get my tires checked every 5,000 miles. I get them rotated. So every once in a while, you got to go back and see Emilio. So I go back. We all do. Those of us that are able to. He's retired now, but we still go up. And I met Emilio through Branford Marcellus, and Emilio, and so he became aware how much I love Sonny. So he would say, "Hey, Sonny's coming to see me tomorrow. Don't tell anybody." So I would show up around the time that Sonny was there. The first time I would see Sonny in the shop, and I got a chance to say hello to him real quickly, not to bother him, because I had met Sonny before. I had gone to see him play so many times, and I knew Bob Cranshaw and Al Foster. But it was great to kind of, even though I was a student, I would, if Sonny Rollins was playing anywhere in New York, or if he was playing in Connecticut, or if he was playing in Boston, I'd be right there. I'd find a way to get there. Same with Joe Henderson. I'd go all over the mid-Atlantic area to see Joe Henderson play. Or a lot of guys, not just those people. Charles McPherson, George Coleman. I was still a student. I want to go see these guys, and I'm a fan, just like everybody else is. So I can honestly say during that time I saw, if they were in town and they were playing the saxophone, I was there, whether it was a person obscure like Jim Pepper, or if it was Michael Brecker, if it was Stan Getz, if it was Johnny Griffin, if it was Plas Johnson, if it was Buddy Tate, whoever, I was in the audience.
Yeah, I mean, you just named off a bunch of people there. Each one a unique stylist, totally different approach to the instrument. I mean, one of the very unique things about jazz is the really good players have their own sound, their own style. You can pick it up in, one or two notes, 3 notes, a phrase, whatever. So I think there's something to be learned from each. Got a question here from one of our friends, Christine Passarella, who says, ask Javon to share highlights from the great speaker series he brings to his university. Could you say something about that?
Hello, Christine. Well, at the University of Hartford, when I got there for Black History Month, I felt that, not to discredit what anyone was doing there, but I felt more could be done. So I was fortunate, actually through Christine, to have met Dr. Cornel West, who's a big jazz fan, and I asked Cornel would he come up and speak to students in Black History Month, and he obviously, well, not obviously, if you know him, he said, sure, brother, I'll be there. And I said, well, how much money you want? He said, man, I don't want a dime. But we went out and made sure we raised money for him to try to pay him some of what he was worth. But he came up, and he's like a rock star. It was just hundreds, thousands of students, man, that were just fired up to hear him talk. And after he finished, I told the students, listen, I got to get him out of here. And after almost an hour and a half, he said, no, I want to shake hands with all the students. And he stayed there and shook hands with all those students. So it was a great learning experience for how you stay there and get opportunity to greet and thank all of your friends and new friends and supporters and people that are in this in the trenches with us for social justice. Then the next year, I brought Sister Sonia Sanchez. She came, which was incredible. Then the next year, Angela Davis, Dr. Angela Davis came, and actually after that, we invited her back, gave her honorary doctorate, which that was the ultimate to meet her and now to know her. And then the next year, we brought Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. And then this year, Nikki Giovanni came, which was another incredible experience. And we gave the university, thankfully, gave her an honorary doctorate. So that's the series she's talking about. And every year we try to invite some individuals that can give students the firsthand account of what it was like to experience some sense of America in the 60s and into the 70s, and understand what our responsibility is to make sure that we all have equity and that we have a place for everyone to be treated equal. And so I'm very happy for those opportunities that brought them to the university.
Yeah. But you've also brought other musicians, other people as well. Didn't you do something with Sonny? Sonny gave Sonny an award or a prize or something?
Well, I had been there about a year and a half, and I gave you a call during that time and said, hey, I want to write a letter or I want to contact Sonny, and I appreciate you kind of, because I was a little nervous about it. I know Sonny likes to kind of keep to himself and everything. He said, no, man, I encourage you to. And I wrote Sonny a letter. We went back and forth. And many of my buddies, jazz musicians, said, oh, man, Sonny probably won't come. And in fact, Sonny accepted the offer to receive the humane letters. And he came to the University of Hartford to receive the honorary doctorate. What's unique about it is I had a gig in Europe, and I called Sonny. I said, Sonny, I got a gig in Europe and I won't be there. I feel badly. And he said, you'll be with me in spirit, right? And I said, yeah. He said, go work. And so then he came up to university to receive it. And it was really great. He got to go over and see a lot of you that haven't been to Hartford are not aware that Jackie McLean and his wife, Dolly, they created an incredible building known as the Artist Collective. And they've done so much for the community with music, dance, and theater. And so Sonny got a chance to go over and see this big, beautiful $1 million building that's built right in the middle of the neighborhood of Hartford. And so that was great. I wasn't there, but Renee told me about that. So I thought that was all great. So I appreciate you, Brett. I want to say publicly for encouraging me to go through with that, because that was one of the biggest days for the university and for me personally.
Well, I'm glad you did it. You know, Sonny's a humble guy. He's gotten an occasional doctorate, but I know that he relishes the opportunity to interact with young musicians, and I'm glad you did that. Okay, we got a question here from a viewer who calls himself Answered Question. When it comes to leading a band, oops, where did he go there? Oops, hold on. Here we go. Yep. When it comes to leading a band, who or what inspires you? Javon.
Well, I got my own personal inspiration to be the best I can be. But the material I write is based on people who have inspired me, whether it's my mother or like the piece I wrote for my father, or the piece I wrote for Freddie Hubbard, or if I want to play or record a Jimmy Heath piece, is by me being inspired by him as a human being and my friendship. Or if it's someone I've never met, to play someone's music that just inspires me, Carlos Jobim, or artists that Curtis Mayfield, who I've never met, but inspire me musically. So the inspiration comes from those kind of situations. Thelonious Monk, who I never met, but inspiring individuals based on what they've done in the world and what they've done through their musicianship.
Absolutely. Lobo Knox, which is kind of an interesting name, says, anything inspired Javon to create one of his best tracks in a mellow tone?
That, if he's talking about the CD with, it's for Chesky Records, and it's a series of Ellington pieces and Strayhorn pieces. So that inspiration was just what we feel about Duke Ellington being the most prolific American composer of the 20th century, and what he's done for the music and what he's done for all of us as musicians. So every day we all owe, at least if you say take a half note, if you take a whole note and split it in half, we owe half of that note to Duke Ellington.
Yeah, absolutely. Gus Mahl wants to ask you, can you please share your experience with the Malcolm X film?
Right. Spike selected a bunch of individuals. Well, actually, the person that selected individuals is a guy named, oh gosh, he's going to kill me too. Last name is Gordon. But anyway, he played Lionel Hampton. He put the group together. I got a chance to know Spike and this individual. I'm not calling his name, because I used to work with Spike's father, Bill Lee, who was an incredible bassist. He's a genius, great composer and musician. And so Spike and this other individual selected a bunch of us, and we had to all learn the part of Flying Home from that 1945 rendition, so I had to learn the solo by
Illinois Jacquet.
Illinois Jacquet, my man. And so that was a great experience because I got a chance to watch Denzel in action. And then I met him again later. I was in a movie called American Gangster. And when he saw me, he called me Flying Home because that scene was called Flying Home, and I played the solo in that piece. I played Illinois Jacquet solo from the Lionel Hampton Big Band. But it was a great experience to be there and to watch Spike and how he wanted everything to be as accurate and real as possible. So that was a great opportunity. I respect Spike for his work for sure.
Well, it was an important film, Malcolm X, one that people should re-see. There is so much content available now for people to check out. It can be like mind-boggling. What am I going to watch? I mean, somebody puts out a movie, somebody puts out a new recording. Easy to get lost in the fray. But things that are important, we got to go back to. And the story of Malcolm X is important, especially in these times.
It was done on a high level, man. And I Denzel was nominated for an Oscar that year. I forget who he went up against, but he should have been a slam dunk. But anyway, it was. Anyone should go back and look at that because it was well done. And you're talking about Denzel Washington. That's the top of the food chain for me.
Yeah, and then you were also in the film American Gangster. Is that the one with Denzel and Russell Crowe?
Absolutely, and he plays Bumpy Johnson, I think, doesn't he? No, he doesn't play Bumpy Johnson. No, he plays the other person. Oh gosh, it's terrible. But anyway, go watch Frank somebody. Frank. It'll come to you in a minute. Yeah, he plays him. But Bumpy Johnson was his kind of mentor. Yeah, it's a great movie.
Are you a cinema fan? Do you like movies?
I am, but I can't even remember Frank's last name. I love films, actually. I love watching TV. I like to watch the movies and things like that. And then a lot of the musicians I'm around, he's been around Jimmy Cobb a lot, and he loved talking about movies. He loved, people like, he loved Robert De Niro and The Godfather and Casino and all those kinds of movies. But he also loved, what's the guy that did White Heat?
Jimmy Cagney.
Look, Jimmy Cagney. Yeah, look, Mom. Top of the
I'm
world.
on top of the world.
Yeah. He got blown away. Jimmy liked those kind of movies. He used to, we talk about movies, and guys like Lenny White. I'd call him every Friday, and he would have some movie for me to go see. He's a big movie guy too, so that inspires me.
So our friend Reggie Oliver reminds us Frank Lucas.
Frank Lucas. Thank you, Brother Oliver. That's it. Frank Lucas.
And we got another jazz messenger in the house. Let's say hello to Bill Pierce.
Oh, man. That's my hero there. This guy has really, in addition to his tenor saxophone playing and his musicianship, he's helped me on many levels personally. So I want to, maybe since he's here, I can acknowledge him in person. But he's helped me a lot. And he was one of the first people I realized that you can play the saxophone and academia will not deter from your musicianship. Because a lot of people feel like, well, if you go to, as a university teacher, it's going to take away from musicianship. I don't agree with that. And I also think it's also a great opportunity for you to offer information and perspective for a lot of students that might not be able to get that performance opportunity like Billy was fortunate to have on the highest level, and I was fortunate to have. So I'm fortunate, and I went to Berkeley to study with Billy. That's the reason I went there. I went to Berkeley because it's Berkeley, but I went at the recommendation of Branford and said, man, you need to get your fingers together, and you need to go study with Billy Pierce. And so, boom, the next day I told my mom, I got to go to Boston. So, like I say, he shaped me a lot, and he's my man. So, thanks for being here, Billy.
And a viewer named Q Williams, what do you think it will take for young folks to embrace jazz at the highest level again? That's the $1 million question. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think more and more as jazz musicians realize this is a music of the highest level. So you don't have to worry about it being on the highest level. It is the highest level in terms of in the way it's presented, and definitely the amount of time and work you have to put in to be a musician. I mean, to be a jazz musician, I don't think you have to work any harder in any other field of music to really go out and to be able to present this art form. It takes a lot of work, a lot of hard work, and you have to be willing to put in the work consistently. And in terms of that, I think it's the obligation of the musicians like myself who've been through the trenches and have had some experience to make sure we are going out in the communities and in places to make our voices known, to let young people know the importance of the music. But I think even if you're not a musician, if you're an American, when you go back and study the history and the rich tradition of this art form, every American should know about this music. It comes from America, and then number two is when you think about the most recognizable form of music, or form, yeah. If you think about the most recognizable form in the world, what is it? It's the blues. I don't care if it's Bob Dylan or if it's the Beatles or if it's Muddy Waters, or you can pick Marvin Gaye. Everybody recorded the blues, and that's an American treasure. So just the idea of knowing what this music has done for the world, and to kind of steal what Wynton Marsalis has been talking about a lot, is the greatest form of democracy. If you go up to watch a jazz group perform, there's no greater representation of democracy, because everyone has to work together for this ultimate presentation to have 100% fruition.
Yeah. Koob Moon asks, what do you think about while you improvise?
Wow. Well, first of all, I don't really like the word improvise, because I think improvise sometimes means you don't know what you're doing. So if I close my eyes and tried to walk to the grocery store, that's improvising, and I'd probably get hit by a car. So I think we are soloists, and what I mean by that is we've looked at a major triad in many, many different ways. So when we see a D minor, we know there's a major triad in there. So I think the best way to get to what you're saying is listen, and then try to take in all your influences and then try to play them like yourself. Since Billy's on the phone, I heard the great Tony Williams say one time that he wanted to have the great drummer Tony Williams, he wanted to have the creativity of Philly Jones. He wanted to have the technical facility of Max Roach. He wanted it to feel like Art Blakey, but played his way. And I think that explains it all. You take all these different influences that you have, and you put them in a blender, and then you blend it all up, and then you drink it, and hopefully you can be you. But I think the big thing to being a soloist, which I think I came to late, the realization late, is be okay with whatever it is that you play. For many years, I just hated what I heard. And the earlier you can get to a place where you can be okay with what you play, because everything you play is okay. And I think that we get handicapped sometimes by the recordings, so we want it to sound just like someone else played it or presented it, and we can never do that. You're never going to sound like anybody else, but you'll have that spirit. But everything that you play today is 100% fine. Believe that. And from there, you just develop and be willing to reach out and ask questions. And again, the music and the history will help you develop as an individual. So, hope that helped.
Well, Bill Pierce says amen.
Okay. Yeah, you should let Billy expound on this, man. He could do much better than me.
Well, you did pretty good.
Yeah.
We only got a few minutes left here. I do want to answer a couple more questions.
Okay.
I lost a couple here. Hold on a second. Where is it? Okay. Peter Antheus, can you ask Javon what happened to the hard-swinging messenger-like jazz style, which is very prominent in the late 80s and early 90s? It's something you don't hear very often anymore in Europe. Any thoughts on that?
There's no more Blakey. I mean, that hard swinging stuff you heard was because it was Art Blakey. But I mean, it's still there. It's just in a different form. So I don't know what he means by hard swinging. I mean, there'll never be another Freddie Hubbard, but we have Wynton Marsalis. There'll never be another Wynton Marsalis, but there'll be someone else. There'll never be another Sonny Rollins, but there's Billy Pierce. There'll never be another Billy Pierce, but there'll be someone else. So when you mean by hard swinging, I don't know what he necessarily means by that. It just depends on where you put the emphasis. I think sometimes now the music isn't coming from maybe that blues inflection or the blues kind of a platform, if you will, or a minor platform, if you will. Sometimes the music now is different meters, 7/4, 5/4, 11/4. It's kind of hard to be hard swinging with those kind of meters. No disrespect to anybody that's doing that kind of stuff. So I think it's still out there. Like you say, things have changed, but I still feel like I'm trying to kind of come from that spirit. I know a person like Ralph Peterson with his ensembles is still trying to come from that spirit, but those musicians from that period, they're not here as prevalent. So it's some of that actual authenticity is a little different. But I still think there's still some hard swinging musicians out here. I mean, we just lost one, God rest his soul, was Roy Hargrove. He was a throwback. He was a hard swinging warrior. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So somebody just said no more Roy Hargrove, but there's still people out here that still put forth that kind of spirit, in my opinion.
Yeah. Here's a comment. Maybe you recognize the name, Nicholas Ryder. He says, Professor Jackson was one of the best mentors and teachers out there that I've ever had.
Thank you, Nicholas. I just spoke to, on his birthday about you, Jerry Bergonzi. He said you're doing good. Nicholas did 4 years with me, and he told me he was going to New England Conservatory, so I said, make sure you soak up everything you can from Jerry Bergonzi and bring it back to me. But Absolutely. I spoke to Jerry about you, and he told me that you're doing good. So congrats to you.
And here's our final question of the session. Damian Curtis, a simple question. Your first jazz record?
Well, the first jazz record that I really became aware of, I think I mentioned to you guys, it was a record called Ammons and Stitt. And there was a tune on there called You Talk That Talk. And my dad played that record 1,000 times. So I just remember that. I can sing every solo. The band was Idris Muhammad was on drums, who I later got to play with. The drummer or the guitarist was Von Freeman's brother. I forget his
George
first name.
Freeman.
George Freeman, and the organist was a guy from Houston that passed away. What was his name? And I played with him once with Alvin Queen. But that's the band. But that's the first record I remember vividly, Ammons and Stitt.
Well, I got to tell you a funny story about Gene Ammons and Sonny Stitt that I forget who told me. You know, there used to be a club, wasn't really a club, but it was a performance space, the Left Bank Jazz Society in Baltimore.
Yeah, sure.
And at one time, Gene Ammons and Sonny Stitt were appearing together. They toured together in those fantastic two tenor things, just like Johnny Griffin and Lockjaw did for a number of years. So one night they were playing at the Left Bank Jazz Society. As we know, Sonny Stitt, incredible technique. And he just came out there on the tenor and he played it all. People were wondering, what's Gene Ammons going to follow that with? Gene Ammons came out, he played one note for about 2 minutes. And it was like an explosion. It was just incredible. The power of a saxophone, just that one note. So what interesting contrasts between the two individuals, Sonny Stitt and Gene Ammons.
Well, you know, I've always spoke about Gene Ammons with a lot of different people, Billy Pierce as well, since he's on the call or this. And I think at a certain point, you need enough talent, you need enough technique to say what you have to say. So Sonny Stitt had the technique that he needed to play the way he played, and Gene Ammons had the technique to tell his story. but Sonny Stitt did not tell his story any better than Gene Ammons. Ben Webster told his story. He didn't have to have the technique of Don Byas to tell his story. Sonny Rollins told his story his way and needed whatever he needed. So I think that's what it's all about. I mean, who's going to be Art Tatum? I mean, you know what I mean? But you can still, Earl Garner can still tell his story. He didn't have to sound like Art Tatum and tell his story. So I think that's the thing that the throwback that I got from Art Blakey was that you need to be able to tell your story. And Art Blakey wanted us to be swinging as much as we could and be individual. He always said that be yourself. Nobody wants to hear somebody else. And I think if you're doing that and you're being true to the music, whatever technique you have and you can tell your story, I mean, who's playing more trumpet than Louis Armstrong? And he had a lot of technique, but it wasn't like Dizzy, but he didn't have to. You know, so I think that's what's important. Just, again, like what you like. As Prez says, you know, like what you like, Prez. And from there, I think you'll be all right.
Yeah, another example comes to mind of what you're talking about. On that infamous program, The Sound of Jazz from 1959, when Billie Holiday joined them, I think Coleman Hawkins, excuse me, took the first tenor solo, and then Ben Webster, and then Prez. And Prez got up, and he just played the most laid back. He might have played 12 notes for the entire solo. And then you cut to Billie Holiday and you see her crying. I mean, it was such an emotional experience. But that is such a perfect example about how three musicians can have their own way to tell a story. Three of the real storytellers in this music: Ben Webster, Coleman Hawkins, and Lester Young. And
absolutely.
Javon Jackson, I want to thank you for telling your story, both in your music and joining us today.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Brett, as always. Good to see you.
And that brings us to the end of today's show. Certainly fun to hang out with Javon Jackson. Please check out his new recording, Deja Vu. And next week, we've got a couple of guests who are involved with the late Phil Woods. Ted Pankin, who co-wrote Phil Woods' autobiography, which is just coming out, and Bill Goodwin, a drummer who played with Phil for many years. So next week, assuming there is a next week, and the world doesn't blow up before then, we're going to focus on the music of Phil Woods, and Phil Woods the man, a pretty remarkable character. Thanks everyone for joining us. Please stay safe and keep listening to jazz.